Good afternoon, everybody. Today we are here with Mrs. Brinda Somaya, Principal Architect, Somaya and Kalappa Consultants, Architect and Urban Conservationist. Thank you, Mrs. Somaya, for being with us today. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing quite well considering we're on a 50-odd day lockdown, but getting used to it in some ways, but still hoping there will be some change soon.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, now till May 18th, we can't really see any change. However, Mumbai, especially being such a red zone, unfortunately. Okay, so just for the purpose of our listeners and to just kick this interview off, tell us, I mean, you're an urban conservationist, which, is extremely unique. Tell us a little bit about what urban conservation is, just for the benefit of people who will be viewing this.
Well, I'm an architect, and I believe the role of the architect goes way beyond just building buildings. I believe, especially in today's context, apart from master planning and building a lot of new contemporary buildings, which we do, it's very important to conserve, restore, recycle, retrofit the old buildings that we have in our country, and we have a very large number of those. And I think even more so after all what has happened recently, that waste should not figure as a word at all in anybody's vocabulary. So as my studio, Somaya Kalappa, what we do is we build new, we conserve, we also do a lot of social connected projects like village works, rural buildings. So our work spans this great country of ours, which is so rich in geography, history, culture, beliefs, and it's been very exciting doing all these different types of work throughout the country. So each aspect of our work has its own value, and the diversity of the practice is what I think makes it different and unique, and for me and the studio, most interesting.
So during this time, like you mentioned, of course, this pandemic has set many industries, people back in what they're doing. So what kind of an effect has it had on you and your practice from the point of view of, projects maybe that were about to be completed, projects that have been stalled, or are you using this time to kind of do more planning work that was, in the pipeline? Can you just give a little bit of insight into that?
Well, all the points which you've mentioned, it's probably affected us in very, very different ways because of the diversity of our practice, and also because of the different stages that each project was in before the pandemic hit. As far as our studio is concerned, I am quite happy to say that we anticipated this. So a week before the actual close down came, we were fully ready to work remotely. So the Friday before the Sunday that it was announced by the Prime Minister, we had actually moved all our computers into individual homes of all our people, and all the data had been organized. So we were ready to start working on Monday. We actually didn't even waste a single day. And so for the last 56 days, we have worked remotely as an entire team. We divided the team into various sections because we have, say, about 6 or 8 group leaders. Each group leader had maybe 6 or 8 people under them. And we connected very frequently on various systems, whether it's Zoom or whatever else, so that everybody felt a sense of inclusion. And then, of course, we had our IT people and support people to make sure that everybody was able to work remotely. So I think maybe within a week, we were able to get everything into order, even working remotely. And we've been, I think, quite good because we've made 2 large presentations and we've been able to prepare a lot of drawings going ahead. So I would say that that aspect, luckily for us, was not a negative at all. Now, as far as projects are concerned, there was perhaps just one project that told us that they were going to hold the project because of what was happening, but they actually told that to us before the lockdown. So we were prepared for that. As far as all the other projects are going, there are different stages of construction in different parts of India. And many of them are institutional projects or we're working with the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. We're doing a lot of buildings for the Indian Institute of Technology in Powai. Now all these projects are going on. They were temporarily stopped during this period. We used it to complete drawings, coordinate, because we were luckily at a stage when we still had drawing work and tendering work and things like that happening, which we were able to complete. There were a couple of projects that were in the heart of Mumbai. One was a restoration project and one was an upgradation of an entire heritage building. Now there we had a different type of problem because it was not a large open site, labor could not come, and we were actually restoring both these buildings. So we were very concerned about the monsoon. That was worrying me greatly because we would have actually closed both these buildings well in time for the monsoon. But luckily from today we are allowed to go back into both these projects. This was one of my biggest worries. So now we have a month, maybe 5 weeks before the monsoon starts, and we hope that we will be able to protect both these buildings. So this respite came just in time. Then we have projects outside Mumbai, like in Goa and in Tamil Nadu, in Madhya Pradesh. Now those projects stalled for a time during the lockdown, but they will start. So each issue we have to look at differently. Each project has different problems, then depending on where they're located, what stage of construction they are at, whether they're still in the design stage, who the client is, whether the client wants to hold it or proceed. And again, thereby, that the type of projects we have, they're not infrastructure, but they tend to be sort of institutional projects which do not get stalled because they're long-term projects. So maybe some of them, if things don't open up fast, but today we heard that even construction is going to open up. So in which case we'll have to run fast to catch up the time that we have lost.
And because you spoke about, that you all can go back on sites as of today, can you just shed some light on any restrictions, conditions, or, kind of rules that the government has set in order for this work to commence and begin?
Well, not only has the government sent out rules, but a lot of the construction and real estate industry has brought out very nicely, brought out detailed rule book, which we have circulated amongst our clients and the contractors and our team as well. So they have to study this very carefully because it depends on which zone you're in, whether you're in a red, orange or green zone. And naturally the rules for each differ considerably. But the broad rules are that everybody working on site has to be identified. They have to have an ID. They have to have a photograph with them. We have to make sure the basic rules like the masks and washing your hands, wearing the mask, maybe gloves, not too many people, the distance. Those rules are constant. And then depending on the location, whether the workers have to actually be in the building or they can be, if it's an urban situation, whether they can be in a nearby. And of course, if it's an institutional situation where there might be a lot of land, then they should actually be located in the site. So again, our construction industry, as you know, Priyanka, is very complex and has many different ways of looking at it. It's not that one glove fits all. So every and each project has to be looked at minutely, very carefully, lot of debate and discussion with the client, with the contractor, with the architects, with the other consultants. And only if we all work together cooperatively and collaboratively can we move forward on the projects.
Absolutely. So, Mrs. Somaya, you of course an urban conservationist, and you pay a great deal of attention to sustainability. And I think this pandemic is almost like a cry from nature to kind of make sure that we are conscious about what we are doing to our environment. So, how do you think the architecture and design industry is going to come out of this? Do you think there are going to be any conscious changes that will be made? In practice, in the practice itself, and how do you think, if at all, do you think people will approach the practice differently?
I think there has to be change. Now, what is it going to be? I think it's little early to forecast everything, but I don't doubt at all that changes have to come. Now, there's some very obvious changes where people like, I'm sure you and us, we've all been working for years on the treatment of construction labor. I personally have been very involved with that. You know that over decades, that they have to be looked after well. If the site is big, they have to have proper accommodation. I have worked for women construction labor to give them water, light, proper food. Now, if all this is done, then even if there's a pandemic, they are there on the site, they're well looked after, then they're not looking to run back to their homes. So I think the how do you treat this unorganized sector, which forms a major part of our actual workforce in our country, and such an important part. So I do hope, and I think it has to be that people have to look at them differently. We've tried very hard, and I think that if some good comes out of that, that will be great. The other thing is, I think people have to see, there are lots of discussions on what has to be built, how does it have to be built, and for whom does it have to be built. And I think, the builders also have to reconsider. For instance, let us just take Dharavi itself. There have been so many solutions for it. We've had hundreds of ideas, thoughts. We've had international competitions. We've had wonderful solutions from the 11 architectural schools right here in Mumbai, plus many international schools have come. But no solution comes because unless there's political will to change this, unless there's developer support or bureaucratic will, it will not change. Now I think this one chance has come, and the people of the Ravi voices must be heard. And the voices of a lot of our congested slums, I mean, it's okay to call them informal housing, but essentially they are slums. Because these pandemics are going to stay, and they might even continue to come more frequently. So we cannot have this situation happening again and again. So certainly the way we look at labor, how do we build also? For whom do we build? Now, for instance, if you're talking to work from home, the WFH, many people don't have adequate facilities at home. This is not London or New York where everyone can work at home. A friend of mine told me that one of her people, when she offered him a laptop to go and work, he said, ma'am, I stay in a room with 5 other people. I don't even have a table for my laptop. What's the use of giving me a laptop? So we have to understand that everybody can't work from home. So that's not going to be the long-term solution unless you build a different type of house where you provide one small study area where, somebody can work from home, the husband or the wife. I mean, so design ideas have to change also. And developers, builders have to build maybe smaller housing, but with a space for ability, for a desk and a computer and a laptop and things like that. So there's not going to be any quick fixes and quick, easy answers, but there will be changes, and it will take little time. But if we think carefully and we address these problems in a proper way, I think all these changes will be for the better.
What about from the material side? So of course, this was, from a professional standpoint on how, we could build moving forward. But, what kind of changes do you think building material industries kind of need to make also in the depth of products that they provide in order to, embrace sustainability a little bit more wholeheartedly?
So this is a very complex question, because we are using steel, we are using concrete in all our buildings. So the question then becomes, how much do you really need to build if you need to reduce the quantity of materials? And then if you're bringing in traditional materials like mud, like terracotta, like brick for tiles, it can be done, but can it be done for 1.2 billion people? How do you ramp up that? So, these are all complicated questions. The point is that everybody has to look at is, how do you create sustainable materials? Yes. How do you look at the manufacturing of these materials? How are they manufactured? What are the materials that you use to manufacture these materials? Are they fossil fuel? What fossil fuel do you use to make them? Do they come from the earth? Are they plastics? What are they? So I know many people do a lot of research, and I suppose some answers will come. I personally feel one of the biggest ways to save costs and to save the earth is for reuse. That waste as a word has to disappear. That word should not exist. We have to retrofit, we have to recycle, we have to restore, and we have to reuse. We can't just keep breaking down things and building new. That's not going to be the answer, because the embodied energy of what exists is just lost when you break
Correct.
down things. So that's a very, very important aspect, that, everything does not have to look like a five-star hotel or a mall. We have so much traditional, wonderful, beautiful architecture also in our country, and we have ordinary buildings, which is fine. There's a beauty in simplicity as well. We have to think for ourselves as Indians and not just ape the West. That's very important for us.
And more on a, just on a personal note, any kind of uh, insight you can provide on how people can approach sustainability in a more approachable way. So I'm not talking about major changes that we need to make, or people don't need to drastically change how they live their lives in order to be kinder to the environment, but any kind of practices you've adopted or you know of, or you'd like to kind of tell people that they can adopt to be kinder in small ways.
Finally, Priyanka, it comes down to you yourself. You know, what is the change that the individual is going to make? Because that's what's going to then, it's not enough for the individual to make the change. It has to go beyond that. But the individual then has to be participatory and spread those ideas amongst others. That's
Right.
how change is going to come. So suppose you say, I'm just thinking hypothetically, because we've been having so many discussions on this, that you say, I'm just going to travel abroad once a year or once in 2 years. I'm not going to keep going on holidays 10 times a year, because airplanes contribute so much to environmental problems. Or within India, this is what I'm going to do. Or this is the amount I'm going to shop, or this is the amount I really need. And we all know how little we need now. And then we have to get together with others, because a single voice, unless it's a very powerful voice like Greta or somebody like that from Sweden, otherwise most of our single voices are not going to be strong enough. We then
Yeah.
have to work together as a group to be able to communicate the voice strongly to society, to government, to bureaucrats, etc., to make sure these changes come. But look around us. We're talking about building something huge and new in Delhi when all this is happening, instead of restoring, recycling, and reusing. We have to think, I think, very, very differently, and we have to be heard. The government, after all, and bureaucrats have to listen to the people of the country who really want a sustain. I was saying what I've enjoyed so much is the video of all the animals who are roaming all around the
Yeah.
countryside with no human beings. And there's a group of sheep who have got onto a children's playground, and they're going on the seesaw and the swings and everything. And it's so delightful. And I'm thinking to myself that photographers are going to have such a field day, taking photographs of this time and what has happened. And one young architect suggested the other day, he said, maybe every year we should close down for 2 months. This way we remember what has happened. We have 2 months when the world stops and the world replenishes itself, and sort of heals itself. And the whole world should stop for 2 months. And I thought that was a great idea. And then I thought of another idea, that just like we have a constitution for politics, etc., India should have a constitution for the environment, which should apply universally to all of us. And those rules and freedoms should be just as strong as our constitution that was written for our freedom movement. So my personal hope is that after this, we will have a constitution to save and protect our nature, our animals, our skies, and our country.
I actually love that idea, and I hope it reaches the right ears and it's implemented in some regard at least. But thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your insights. It was wonderful having you. Stay home and stay safe, of course, and we hope everything gets back to some semblance of normalcy once we hit May 18th.
Thank you. Thank you, Priyanka. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.